What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the collaboration mixtape by Dirt Gang. Basically, this project is called the new N.W.A. and it came out in the summer of 2011. The thing about this particular project is Slim Duncan, after he was starting to get some solo mixtapes established in like early 2010 and pitches like that, after coming out of Waka Flocka Shadow in mid-late 2009, I'd have to say he started to drop a series of solo mixtapes, and eventually towards the end of 2010 he started putting on some of the folks that he knew in pitches like that. So particularly some of these that started at first was like apparently Slim Duncan dropped a mixtape with Just Rich Gates and another cat called Triple Turned Up as far as that particular pitch kind of went. But then later on in like March of 2011 he dropped a collaboration mixtape with N.W.A, which I reviewed that particular mixtape, Block Illegal, back in March. Pretty good concept to get that one. That got a relatively high score, pretty much over like an 8 out of 10. Pretty much over like an 8 out of 10 I'd have to say. But this is a pretty quality mixtape here as well. This particular group, there's some folks on here. N.W.A is a part of this particular project as well. Slim Duncan is like the head honcho of this particular product. This is affiliated. This is brought to you by Bricks. This is brought to you by Brick Squad Monopoly, basically Waka Flocka's label. But this is basically like Slim Duncan's group, where Slim Duncan was a wingman of Waka Flocka. Waka Flocka was a wingman of Gucci Mane. So this is kind of the concept. Now, initially I thought that Slim Duncan was going to try to put on N.W.A, but he did put on a couple of folks in like the solo career that he kind of did just with some collaboration mixtapes. But this is like the group effort. There's some other cats on here. Just Rich Gates is one of these folks. He's already dropped a mixtape before this one. I'm eventually going to get that Triple Turned Up one. N.W.A's on here a couple times. He's not as predominant. I still feel like N.W.A was kind of somewhat in his early stages in 2011, but he does have some show stealing songs on this particular project, but he's not on here in an overabundance. There's a cat named Day Day on here. There's some cats Cam and J Mike that are on here. And then to round things up, I'd say there's some other folks that weren't really on like the album cover as far as that pitch can happen. So it's just kind of the concept about it. But I would have to say Slim Duncan does have some show stealing verses on here as well, and songs just within the pitch. He doesn't really pack this album full. Slim Duncan doesn't really pack this project full of exclusive songs as far as that pitch gun goes, at least on his end, but he is on here quite a bit, I'd have to say, and he does have like a couple songs that are pretty much signs that he was going to be one of the next to blow up on Gucci Mane's label as far as that pitch gun went. He was pretty huge in 2011. He was really starting to break out that year. Probably would have said by mid-late 2012 or early 2013, I would almost have to suggest that Slim Duncan probably would have had an album out just within that pitch. So it's definitely kind of the concept. Definitely RIP on that tip for Slim Duncan as far as that pitch gun goes. But the rest of these cats do have some good appeals. I would say the two second biggest cats that I feel like had the most star power on this particular product, they were probably the next ones to blow up, would definitely be N.W.A, despite the limited amount that he's on here. And then a surprising one on here was Just Rich Gates. He really has some of the album's best songs, I'd have to say. He really has some of the mixtape's best songs, and surprisingly he was able to secure some Lex Luger beats, which Lex Luger in 2010, 2011 was definitely a pretty red hot producer. So it's interesting that his price was probably like 100,000, 80,000. Lex Luger's price for a production probably back in those days was probably like 100,000, 150,000 per production, I'd say. So it's a pretty dope concept that he was able to secure some of those and just be able to siphon and continue to expand upon the drill type sound. Is interesting. Slim Duncan doesn't full blown go for those type of songs. I know he was probably on the verge of getting towards some of those, but he actually, some of the ones on here are just some pretty litty type moments. There's some skeletal type moments on here. It's interesting to kind of see what Slim Duncan kind of thought of like the Future type sound, and by Future I mean like Future the rapper from Atlanta. I just would have to say like the sort of stuff that Future was doing. He wasn't quite on the Pluto tip just yet, but just the concept of the trap type sound, the 2010s trap that would become dominant from about 2013, 2014 forward, was kind of in its early stages in early mid 2011, I'd have to say. So it's an interesting concept that Slim Duncan was trying to have some of the skeletal type moments to be a part of that. There's some moments on here like I Got 50 that kind of do that, and I also feel like his other new single on here, which is Lights On, is a pretty good concept. Kind of see some of the stuff that was getting towards some of that litty kind of glitz that was going to happen. But there's definitely some drill on here. There's definitely some early 2010s type trap, some early bird 2010s trap on here. N.W.A definitely tries to do some of that as well as far as that pitch kind of happens. It's kind of the concept, it's just the aspect of some of this. It's a pretty varietized product, definitely pretty trendy, kind of a low-key type one that I just feel like not a ton of folks full-blown kind of know about as far as that pitch kind of happens. I mean, unfortunately, it's kind of somewhat haphazard just in the aspect. It's not all these cats full-blown deliver, but I just think it was kind of something that would have been fleshed out. I think a lot of these folks pretty much would have been like with G-Unit and Wu-Tang and some of those type of things, but they would have gotten established a lot further later. Even if some of these cats would have only been mixtape bound, I still think a lot of this would have gotten pretty pro-fused as far as that particular kind of goes. But basically, there were 22 songs on this mixtape, not counting the intro. There's 23 songs on here, but not counting the intro. There's 22 songs. Now, a number of these are just kind of snippets, unfortunately. And the unfortunate thing about it is this Day Cat does not really get a good example of some shine, just because most of his exclusive songs on here are less than like a minute and a half, I'd have to say. And it's kind of the same thing with Debo. Some of his type songs get the short end of the stick as far as that particular kind of happens. Like Day's song, All Holla, this was kind of a snippet, so I almost don't want to count that one. And it's the same thing with Day Day's gassed up. Some of those type ones were just kind of snippets of ones that just didn't really get the effective establishment. And then Debo has this shortened song in like Secret, which probably should have been. I just feel like some of these type moments, I do think Debo was on the verge of blowing up. I do feel like Debo was on the verge of blowing up. It was just kind of in like the early stages in 2011. This was the second project I had seen from him in 2011. This is the concept after like his initial kickoff project with Slim Duncan, Block Illegal. I'd say it was an interesting concept. This is the next supposed project that he particularly kind of did. I know that Dirt Gang did a number of projects in 2011. They did at least 2 mixtapes and worked on a third one in late 2011 that came out. That was probably that's pretty much one of the last things that Slim Duncan worked on. But I just would say it's kind of the concept about being able to get some of that. But Debo was just kind of in his early stages, but he did manage to have some show stealing type verses on here. He definitely had some potential, and it's proven later on with the potential that he cracked into in later projects like the Gangsta Girls tape that I reviewed just like a few weeks ago as far as that pitch happens, the Mill Before Dinner Time project. So, but yeah, basically out of 22 songs on here, I wound up recommending 13, which one of which is just one of these songs is an almost song, which is On Me, and basically the reason for that is just because that's on like Slim Duncan and Debo's particular project. They just recycled that particular song from the Block Illegal projects. That's a leftover from that one. But I basically recommend 12 new songs, but I would say that one of which is Offsides, which is also on like the Triple Turned Up mixtape from early 2011 that Slim Duncan did with Just Rich Gates. I'm going to go ahead and count that one because supposedly I'm going to go ahead and count the Offsides remix because supposedly it's a remix. It might have some different type appeals about it or new verses on there, something like that. But I would have to say there's 12 songs to recommend on here, one of which 13 songs I recommend on here, one of which is an almost song like I was saying. So that's the concept. But the 13 songs or the 12 songs I recommend would be Million Dollar Trap, Paper Man, 80s Baby, JCE Got the Kush, I'm In It, I Got 50, Dumb Out, Bout Them Bands, Got a Lot of Bucks, Pump Faking, Lights On, and Offsides remixed. And then the 13th song, which is an almost song, just because it's on another project, is On Me with Slim Duncan and Debo. So basically, to talk about some of these, I do feel like Debo's song 80s Baby is a real nice one. This surprisingly has Waka Flocka Flame on here, which Waka Flocka is not on here a whole bunch. He's kind of like the overseer of this particular product, and it's the same thing with Gucci Mane. He's kind of like the vast overseer of this particular product, but it's just an interesting concept that Waka Flocka, if you look hard enough, is on here like once or twice, just in minor batches, I'd have to say in particular. But it's interesting that this pretty dope Debo song, I'd have to say it's like a pivoting kind of night venue jazz of a song, I'd have to say definitely. And it's like an exhilarating stock evening, I would feel like, and this is just like a haunting kind of trap brewer. So I definitely feel like about this particular one. This is once again like an early 2010s trap, just early bird type sound to kind of get here. This is the sort of stuff that Future and folks like that and Migos and Gucci Mane were trying to do in like 2011 as far as that pitch can happen with it. Just an interesting concept because this is not drill. Now I've kind of noticed that Debo was not really approaching drill back in 2010 and 2011 and stuff. He really didn't go for that particular sound. He was kind of trying to do the stuff that Future and some of those type folks and Gunna and those type folks, Young Thug, were kind of doing far out in like 2013, 2014. So when you think of these Debo songs, a lot of these are just like early kind of aspects of the sort of stuff that would become revolutionary later for like the rest of the 2010s decade and pitches like that. It's just an interesting concept, kind of a haunting type beat, just an interesting kind of spook of a song, I'd have to say, but it is pretty good concept. Another song that's pretty bopping from Debo, I'd have to say, is Million Dollar Trap. This is like I was saying, this is like a bopping kind of dance flash of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a quick pace kind of night outing pizzazz, I would definitely feel like, and this is a pretty good local gem. So this is a good type one. This is definitely a good type one to kind of get for like some house party type appeals, bitches like that. Just a good simplistic kind of frivolous type song to kind of get here. Just real nice dance snap as far as that particular kind of goes. Not necessarily like a trap song, but just kind of the concept of just being able to say just some of that dance bounce that's just necessary for like some bottle pop and just the jive of being in motion. It's a good riveting type dance jive as far as that particular kind of happens. Just some good nice ones. This real electro type beat that works pretty well. like the concept of it. Slim Duncan and Day Day are on there, which is a pretty good pitch. Do you like that concept? I'm glad that Slim Duncan was on here a number of times. He does come off as like Slim Duncan was one of the head honchos of this particular group, and it's a pretty good concept that he was on here a number of times to kind of get some shine as far as that particular kind of happens, because I like the concept of getting some of these. That's a nice one. Paperman is a pretty nice one as well. This is by Just Rich Gates, which like I was saying, Just Rich Gates has some show stealing songs on this particular project. He's definitely one of the ones that has the most star power on this particular project overall, I'd have to say, and plus he had the budget to get some good and killer kind of Lex Luger beats. But this one in particular, Paperman's a real short type song. This is like a minimalist kind of snap music, similar type club hitter. I'd have to say, pretty good concept for that. This is a brief song, but it's pretty catchy, and it's just an overall catchy kind of dance gem, I'd have to say. So it's just a concept. This song is kind of like an afterthought of like snap music from like the mid-late 2000s as far as that pitch kind of happens. It's just interesting to kind of see it. It's just interesting to kind of see that in mid-2011 as far as that particular pitch kind of happens with it. Just an interesting concept, kind of get some of that just within the appeal behind it. It's kind of, I do feel like it's kind of like it is a pretty full-blown afterthought in those particular type times, but it makes me wonder if there's like a lengthier version of this particular song, because it's a pretty dope song, but it's just unfortunate that it's less than 2 minutes. I'd have to say it would have been a dope concept to have had this been fleshed out and been a little bit more of like a lengthier bop to have to say, but I'm going to have to check out some of Just Rich Gates' kind of projects here, because I just wonder about some of them. He does have some projects, so I'm going to have to get to some of those. Slim Duncan's I Got 50 is a pretty nice one. This is like a skeletal kind of commercial 2010s trap tune, I'd have to say in particular. This one's pretty similar to like Future's approach in like 2011 and 2012, I'd have to say. This is just an early bird type one to kind of get for that particular song. This is just an early bird type one to get for that particular sound, and this is just a pretty trendy bop, I'd have to say. So it's just a concept of just some of that type of stuff. I think, Slim Duncan didn't make it to Future's Pluto and some of those type pitches, but just the particular type sound that was going along with trap music. I mean, trap around that particular time was starting to morph in 2011. There were a lot of things that were trying to lay down the tracks as far as the architecture, doing that just between Gucci Mane, Future, Slim Duncan, Waka Flocka, some of those type folks, even Jeezy and folks like that. I'd have to say Yo Gotti, some of those type folks. But it's just the concept as it started to metamorphosize into some of those type pitches. This was a concept that it's just really has like a skeletal type format. There's like an R&B singer on here. Don't really know who it is, but it's a good concept that Slim Duncan was trying to aim for, like some single type formats or just something that could kind of break through as far as that pitch can happen. Does a pretty good job of it. It's rough around the edges, just in terms of like the format. I like the production fair. It's a great song. I definitely feel like the execution, but Future just nailed this particular sound is better when he did it in 2012 with Pluto. But it's just kind of the concept that this is kind of a trailblazer of a song just within some of those pitches. Definitely pretty relatively commercial type one that just didn't get the chance to break through, but it is a pretty dope concept to kind of see some of this. Slim Duncan was really trying to get that commercial breakthrough in 2011. Dope concept. Pump Faking by Just Rich Gates is a pretty nice one. This is like an affable and kind of effective drill music of a song. I'd have to say this is a definite headliner that stands out real well, I'd have to say, and this is just a pretty dope Lex Luger beat, I'd have to say. So it's just a dope concept, getting some Lex Luger productions on here. Definitely the sort of stuff that Waka Flocka feels perfectly at home on. It's just too bad that Slim Duncan really didn't hop on any Lex Luger type beats. Makes me wonder why he didn't. I think in some cases back in the day, I kind of felt like maybe it was just an accident that he did not be on those, but I almost question if Slim Duncan didn't do it just to not be pigeonholed, because I definitely think he should have been on those type of songs like Hard in the Paint, kind of been like an assist to Waka Flocka Flame. I don't think he wanted to steal his sound, but he definitely had some good type moments to kind of get, but I noticed that he just wasn't on those type ones. But Just Rich Gates definitely was pretty good concept, kind of get some further drill type music. It's definitely one of the best produced ones on here. This is the real trendy type one for early 2011 and 2010 as far as the pitch kind of goes. It's typical drill type fare, but it works. Slim Duncan's Lights On is a real nice one. This is something that could have damn near been a single. I'd have to say just has the real affable appeal. This is another real standout of one that just kind of works in particular as far as being able to have some of that just within the aspect of getting towards it. It's like a litty kind of evening stunt music of a song, I'd have to say. This is definitely like some cruise out pizzazz, and I'd have to say this is like a get ready to get tore up type flash of a song, I'd have to say in particular. So this is definitely some litty kind of vehicle bound just type pull up type music to kind of get within that relative pizzazz behind it. It's definitely pretty gleaming and contemporary type one for 2011, I'd have to say, and it's definitely one of the more executed moments by Slim Duncan, apart from like the Twin Towers 2 mixtape from late 2011 with Waka Flocka, I'd have to say, with songs like Blindside on there and some of those type ones that were the bigger highlights off of Twin Towers 2 with Waka. I'd have to say it's just a good concept, but this is definitely one that had some relative single approach. Probably could have been like a buzz single, something like that. Just has that appeal. I mean, it's a pretty litty, haunting type spook of a song, but I did like the fact that Gucci Mane and Waka Flocka were on here as well. It's a pretty dope concept just to say that even Gucci Mane was on here just the one time, and Waka Flocka, this is his second appearance, so it's just a pretty good concept for that. Offsides remix is another real nice one that works pretty well. I want to say this was initially like a Slim Duncan song on like the Triple Turned Up mixtape that I was talking about with Just Rich Gates, I'd have to say, but this is another surprise headliner. I'd have to say bop from Just Rich. I would definitely feel like this is like a killer drill Lex Luger beat, I'd have to say, and this is just an overall affable type one. So this one definitely has some good casual appeal. It's like some more litty kind of pizzazz type flash along with pump faking and lights on, I'd have to say. The last few songs you hear on this particular mixtape, the fourth quarter of this project really kicks ass, I'd have to say, in particular. It just does a lot of damage, and these are just some real nice ones for vehicle bound type stuff, and this mixtape bound type fare to just makes like some custom mixtapes that really kick ass as far as that pitch can goes. It's some real nice litty night gleam, I'd have to say. Another one that kind of does that has got a lot of bucks, I'd have to say. It's a pretty good concept to kind of get some of these. This is another Just Rich Gates type tune, I'd have to say. It's like a gnarled kind of early bird 2010s trap marinating of a song, I'd have to say, and this is like a basic nightclub vibes that this song kind of gives. So I guess I would have to say that Got a Lot of Bucks is not like pump faking lights on an offsides remix, but I would have to say it's just another nice nightclub type one to kind of get here, kind of similar to like $1 Million Trap and some of those type ones, I'd have to say. There's some other ones on here like 80s Baby. There are some other ones on this particular project that are kind of similar to Got a Lot of Bucks, I'd have to say, but this is just a basic kind of entry type one. There's some good Apple type songs, I'd have to say, in particular. There's another one I'm thinking of. Oh yeah, another one that's kind of like Got a Lot of Bucks would be About Them Bands, I'd have to say. So that's a dope concept to get some of these fraternized type ones. But this is basically just some lobby and just initial type kickoff frat type music, I'd have to say. Got a Lot of Bucks, I'd have to suppose. It's some good nightclub just marinating. Just once again another skeletal kind of trap type tune for 2010s trap. This is yet another drill type highlight from Just Rich Gates, I'd have to say. Just a real excellent type one. This is another red hot drill bopper, I'd have to say. Like I was saying, this is pretty dope concept, kind of get that. It's like a carnivorous energy and excellent turn up snaps that this song particularly kind of gives. So it's just an excellent type concept. Just some of these drill type ones. The thing about it in 2011, just the pitch behind it, is these songs were not really burning. These songs were not really getting burnt out as far as that pitch would kind of happen. This really has the execution, just being able to get some of these. These just really had some thrill type moments. Just makes you want to throw money everywhere. Just really get the women dancing some of those type pitches, and just pop bottles pitches like that just really have a pretty shrill and overall hit type time. These are sorts of ones like this is kind of an early rendition of the sort of stuff that Future kind of mastered with this Pluto album and some of those type pitches. I'd have to say it's just another good concept to get some more cats. Like prior to this, like a few days ago, I probably said I didn't even know who Just Rich Gates kind of was, but it's this kind of concept of just being able to say that I like the sound of this particular cat and I'm going to have to check him out more as far as that kind of happens. So it's definitely kind of the thing about it. Day Days, I'm in It's a pretty nice one. This is one of the few Day Day songs on here where he dominates this in particular. It's too bad that he kind of got the short end of the stick on this particular project, but this is like a groggy kind of house party drew of a song, I'd have to say. It's like a good spooky kind of autumn music, I would definitely have to suppose, and this is like some basic kind of neighborhood night type thrills, I'd have to say. Is a good concept to hit up like the gas station, get some tacos, get some stuff like that, just those sorts of things. Get like a frozen burrito or like some Swishers, some of those type pitches as far as that particular kind of happens. It's just a pretty adult type one, I'd have to say. Definitely one where you're high as hell, some pitches like that. It's a relative concept of just being in the neighborhood, just the neighborhood pizzazz of just outings and just pitches like that, just smoke sessions, some of those type pitches, I'd say is pretty good concept. JCE Got the Kush is a nice one. This has Waka Flocka on there, and like he's not really on the song, but he kind of helps on the overlay of the particular song. Slim Duncan's on this song, folks, like that. I'd have to say this like a jivey kind of dance club bounce of a song. I'd have to say it's definitely like a get tipsy and pop bottles kind of fun. I'd have to say in particular, and this one just has. So once again, JCE Got the Kush is another Just Rich Gates type tune that really hits. Basically, all the Just Rich Gates songs just really hit pretty damn heavily. I'd have to say in particular, minus like maybe one, I'd have to say, but it's just kind of concept. A lot of these just really do a lot of damage. This is just a pretty glissy and just overall type fare that just has a lot of good commercial bounce about it. That just, I feel like this song JCE Got the Kush is pretty similar to like $1 Million Trap. I'd have to say just the concept behind it's just a little bit of commercial bite. It has the same particular. It's just kind of the concept. This is just kind of like some overall good dance club type festivities, just not quite as gnarled and mean mug type music. Just in particular, it's just a good concept. Get some smoke sessions, get the women dancing pitches like that. As far as that kind of happens, I'd have to say so. It's a good one. About Them Bands is a pretty nice one as well. It's like a ghostly kind of trap club turn up of a song, I'd have to say. In particular, it's like a basic kind of fraternized kickoff of a song, I'd have to say, and this is like some residential snaps. So this one's pretty similar to Got a Lot of Bucks, I'd have to say. Just the initial kind of just appeal, some of that just in a more haunting type sense, I'd have to say. Pretty dope concept, kind of get this one. Definitely glad this is by J Mike and Cam, I'd have to say. It's pretty good concept. It's too bad that these cats didn't deliver more on this particular project, but I did like the haunting appeal of this particular one. It's just kind of a residential type one, or relative one to that sort of fashion. It has to say just kind of something for just like the after effects of just kind of in between type moments. Not quite as crazy and as turn up type one as some of these Just Rich Gates drill type tunes, or the more ferocious Slim Duncan type songs. But I would have to say it's this kind of concept of getting some of these. It's kind of some basic, just hang out on the couch, smoke session type tunes, just with a beer in your hand. Some of those type pitches I'd have to say. So it's dope enough concept, kind of get that. It's really happens to kind of be a thing. So it's just a lot of these just have that sort of appeal. So talk about some of the songs I don't recommend on here. Basically, once again, Slim Duncan throws the 100 song on here. Now, this is a song that YC did where he features Slim Duncan, but I just really feel like the more I hear this song on continued albums and tapes that it happens to be on, the more I just realize that this particular production of this particular song is just not that affable in terms of that the concoction behind it. Just really kind of had like a clumsy kind of plodding along type production that just didn't really work that well. I think it's a somewhat decent bop, but it just is not quite. I just feel like the concept is just, it doesn't have like the memorability that some of Slim Duncan's other tunes just happen to have around that particular time that came out. I definitely feel like songs like I Got 50 and Lights On just I feel like songs by Slim Duncan like I Got 50 and Lights On just completely stampede over that particular song. This really is like a weaker song in a lot of fashions compared to some of these other ones on here. So I feel like on 100s is kind of a dud. Some of these snippet type songs probably shouldn't have been on here. They just should have probably just given like the original song format. I don't know why they did that. Songs like Gassed Up and All Holla and Secret were just some ones that were just kind of disappointments, that they just were not more fleshed out. I just don't really see the concept of listening to a song for like 35 seconds if you count the DJ screaming pitches like that. Those should have been more realized. I feel like some of these type tunes on here, like Watch Your Mouth and I'm Killing Them by J Mike and Cam, and some of those type folks just didn't deliver quite as heavily. We're just kind of flatter type ones that just didn't really have the production type taste that was really necessary, just the real thrills of being able to do it. And like some of these other ones, like Dirt Gang, Brick Squad, Got 'Em, is just kind of a poor type one that just, I mean, it's a decent concept because that one is a little bit of a haunting type one, but it just didn't really have the appeal overall as far as that word particularly to kind of go. The song War by G.I. Joe and Chino and Slim Duncan was just kind of one that just didn't work that well as far as that. It was just kind of a tougher one to hear. I feel like the volume control of that particular one was just not as well put together, and just kind of aspect is kind of trying to be like another trap and R&B type song, I'd have to say, but just didn't pull off the vibes nearly as well. So that's just the basic concept about some of these, I'd have to say. So so the concept of what I'm going to score this particular mixtape, me basically recommending 13 songs out of 22 on here. I'm going to go ahead and give this mixtape like a 6.75 out of 10, because I feel like I'm raising the score just because this is free and there's so many hits on here. Just the surprise factor about this is just the fact that unlike certain group artists, when they'll only be dominant in like certain fashions, there's a number of folks on here that just has some surprising appeal that just works pretty damn well. These Lex Luger productions are really effective. They capitalize on a trend that works. There's some early 2010s trap renditions. Slim Duncan and folks like that. Slim Duncan and N.W.A were trying to advance like the sound that would become predominant from 2013 forward. The sort of stuff that Future and YG, the sort of stuff that Future and Yo Gotti were trying to push forward, and capitalizing on those trends. There's just some excellent type moments on here. There's some haunting kind of house party type trap moments and pitches like that. Just some good kind of residential bound type stuff that gets some smokage and tacos and some of those type pitches. Just overall has that relative appeal, and it's just an overall pretty jivey and loose and just fun project that just is pretty damn wicked, I'd say. So it's a pretty good concept. The social score of this particular mixtape, I'm going to give the social score of this mixtape like a 7.75 out of 10, because I definitely feel like the Just Rich Gates and Slim Duncan songs have a lot of commercial bite and appeal. A lot of these looked like they were going to break through in a lot of ways, and I probably would have said if N.W.A would have been on here more, he probably would have had that aspect as well. It's just kind of the concept that some of this needed some fleshing out, but a lot of this was really ready to go, and surprisingly not underhanded, which is a pretty excellent concept to kind of say that these guys were trained to go and just had the affability just on their first project being able to deliver that well. That's definitely the concept. In terms of the future, like, unfortunately, Dirt Gang kind of broke up after Slim Duncan's death. Some of these folks did continue to put out projects, like N.W.A eventually put out albums and pitches like that and got some charting singles and some of that type of stuff, but for the most part, I'll just have to look into some of these folks to see what they kind of particularly did, and just the kind of affable success rate that they kind of have. But this is definitely a pretty relatively above average and just solidly successful project here that has a lot of gems and just a lot of good nightlife and flash and just overall car traverse pitches like that. Just nightlife and residential pizzazz that this is very effective, I'd have to say.